Hey y'all, it's Kim again. So this is the KUBARK Counterintelligence Interrogation Program. It just outlines how to do it. So anyway, because we're also going through the Senate torture report. I've got all the CIA documents, but KUBARK was a cryptonym for some program or some group within the CIA. However, it worked out. I don't Anyway, I didn't know all this stuff until I started looking into it. But let's see. So, screening and other preliminaries. Screening, some large stations are able to conduct preliminary psychological screening before interrogation starts. The purpose of screening is to provide the interrogator in advance with a reading on the type and characteristics of the interrogatee. It is recommended that screening be conducted whenever personnel and facilities permit, unless it is reasonably certain that the interrogation will be of minor importance or that the interrogatee is fully cooperative. Screening should be conducted by interviewers, not interrogators, or at least the subjects should not be screened by the same KUBARK personnel who will interrogate them later. So something's been taken out here. Other psychological testing aids are best administered by a trained psychologist. Tests conducted on American POWs returned to U.S. jurisdiction in Korea during the Big and Little Switch suggest that prospective interrogatees who show normal emotional responsiveness on the Rorschach and related tests are likelier to prove cooperative under interrogation than are those whose responses indicate that they are apathetic and emotionally withdrawn or barren. Extreme resistors, however, share the response characteristics of collaborators. They differ in the nature and intensity of motivation rather than emotions. An analysis of objective test records and biographical information is a sample of 759 Big Switch repatriates revealed that men who had collaborated differed from men who had not in the following ways. The collaborators were older, had completed more years of school, scored higher on intelligence tests, administered after repatriation, had served longer in the army prior to capture, and scored higher on the psychopathic deviant scale. I don't know what that PD means. However, the 5% of the non-collaborator sample who resisted actively, who were either decorated by the Army or considered to be reactionaries by the Chinese, differed from the remaining group in precisely the same direction as a collaborator group and could not be distinguished from this group on any variable except age. The resistors were older than the collaborators. Even a rough preliminary estimate, if valid, can be a boon to interrogators because it will permit him to start with generally sound tactics from the beginning, tactics adapted to the personality of the source. Dr. Maloney has expressed the opinion, which we may use as an example of this, that the AVH was able to get what it wanted from Cardinal Mindszenty because the Hungarian service adapted its interrogation methods to his personality. There can be no doubt that Mindszenty's preoccupation with the concept of becoming secure and powerful through the surrender of a self to the greatest power of them all, his God idea, predisposed him to the response elicited in his experience with the communist intelligence. For him, the surrender of self system to authoritarian system was natural, as was the very principle of martyrdom. The task of screening is made easier by the fact that the screener is interested in the subject, not in the information which you may possess. Most people, even many provocation agents, who have been trained to recite a legend will speak with some freedom about childhood events and familial relationships, and even the provocateur, who substitutes a fictitious person for his real father, will disclose some of his feelings about his father in the course of detailing his story about the imaginary substitute. If the screener has learned to put the potential source at ease to feel his way along in each case, the source is unlikely to consider that a casual conversation about himself is if dangerous. The screener is interested in getting the subject to talk about himself. Once the flow starts, the screener should try not to stop it by questions, gestures, or other interruptions until sufficient information has been revealed to permit a rough determination of type. The subject is likeliest to talk freely if the screener's manner is friendly and patient. His facial expression should not reveal special interest in any one statement. He should just seem sympathetic and understanding. Within a short time, most people who have begun talking about themselves go back to early experiences, so that merely by listening and occasionally making a quiet, encouraging remark, the screener can learn a great deal. Routine questions about school, teachers, employers, and group leaders, for example, will lead the subject to reveal a good deal of himself, of how he feels about his parents, superiors, and others of emotional consequence to him because of associative links in his mind. It is very helpful if the screener can imaginatively place himself in the subject's position. The more the screener knows about the subject's native area and cultural background, the less likely is he to disturb the subject by an incongruous remark. Such comments as, "That must have been a bad time for you and your family," or, "Yes, I can see why you were angry," or, "It sounds exciting," are sufficiently innocuous not to distract the subject, yet provide adequate evidence of sympathetic interest. Taking the subject's side against his enemy serves the same purpose, and such comments as, "That was unfair," "They had no right to treat you that way," will aid rapport and stimulate further revelations. It is important that gross abnormalities be spotted during the screening process. Persons suffering from severe mental illness will show major distortions, delusions, or hallucinations, and will usually give bizarre explanations to their behavior. Dismissal or prompt referral of the mentally ill to professional specialists will save time and money. The second and related purpose of screening is to permit an educated guess about the source's probable attitude toward the whole page was redacted. Interrogation, something. An estimate of whether the interrogatee will be cooperative or recalcitrant is essential to planning because very different methods are used in dealing with these two types. At stations or bases which cannot conduct screening in the formal sense, it is still worthwhile to preface any important interrogation with an interview of the source conducted by someone other than the interrogator and designed to provide a maximum of evaluative information before interrogation commences. Unless a shock effect is desired, the transition from the screening interview to the interrogation situation should not be abrupt. At the first meeting with the interrogatee, it is usually a good idea for the interrogator to spend some time in the same kind of quiet, friendly exchange that characterized the screening interview. Even though the interrogator now has the screening product, the rough classifications by type, he needs to understand the subject in his own terms. If he is immediately aggressive, he imposes upon the first interrogation session and to a diminishing extent upon succeeding sessions. Too arbitrary a pattern. Okay. As one expert has said, anyone who proceeds without consideration for the disjunctive power of anxiety in human relationships will never learn interviewing. Other preliminary procedures, something's been redacted there, looks like, and this says the preliminary handling of other types of interrogation sources is usually less difficult. It suffices for the present purpose to list the following principles. All available pertinent information ought to be assembled and studied before the interrogation itself is planned, much less conducted. An ounce of investigation may be worth a pound of questions. A distinction should be drawn as soon as possible between sources who will be sent to redacted site organized and equipped for interrogation and those who something's been redacted. Interrogation will be completed by the base or station with which contact is first established. The suggested procedure for arriving at a preliminary assessment of walk-ins remains the same. Something looks like it's been taken out. Okay, the key points are repeated here for ease of reference. These preliminary tests are designed to supplement the technical examination of a walk-in's documents, substantive questions about claimed homeland or occupation, and other standard inquiries. The following questions, if asked, should be posed as soon as possible after the initial contact while the walk-in is still under stress and before he is adjusted to a routine. The walk-in may be asked to identify all relatives and friends in the area or even the country in which PV Prime asylum is first requested. Traces should be run speedily. Provocation agents are sometimes directed to defect in their target areas, and friends or relatives already in place may be hostile assets. At the first interview, the questioner should be on alert for phrases or concepts characteristic of intelligence or CP activity and should record such leads, whether it is planned to follow them by interrogation on the spot. LC flutter should be used if feasible. If not, the walk-in may be asked to undergo such testing at a later date. Refusal should be recorded as well as indications that the walk-in has been briefed on the technique by another service. The manner as well as the nature of the walk-in's reaction to the proposal should be noted. If LC flutter, screening, investigation, or any other methods do establish a prior intelligence history, the following minimal information should be obtained. And they redacted that. Okay, all documents that have a bearing on the planned interrogation merit study, documents from block countries, or those, or those which are in any respect unusual or unfamiliar, are customarily sent to the proper field or headquarters component for technical analysis. If during screening or any other pre-interrogation phase, it is ascertained that the source has been interrogated before, this fact should be made known to the interrogator. Agents, for example, are accustomed to being questioned repeatedly and professionally. So are persons who have been arrested several times. People who have practical training in being interrogated become sophisticated subjects, able to spot uncertainty, obvious tricks, and other weaknesses. Summary, the screening and the other preliminary procedures will help the interrogator and his base station, to decide whether the prospective source is likely to possess useful counterintelligence because of association with the Foreign Service or Communist Party and is likely to cooperate voluntarily or not. Armed with these estimates and with whatever insights screening has provided into the personality of the source, the interrogator is ready to plan. Okay, so that's the end of that, and then we'll just go on to probably the JFK docs because I need to get those caught up. Anyway, I'll tell later. Bye.